Welcome to Abiotic and Biotic Notes. To begin, we're going to look at the role of climate. When we look at this role, we're going to consider four things. The first, what actually is climate? The second, we're looking at the greenhouse effect. Third, the effect of latitude on climate. And fourth, heat transport in the biosphere. First of all, don't get confused between weather and climate. Weather are day-to-day, ever-changing conditions in an area. For example, we can have sideways rain in Richmond one day, and then the next day we'll have ice. Climate is looking at long-term weather in an area. So you're looking at an average for a particular region. When considering the greenhouse effect, you're referring to atmospheric gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapors that trap heat inside the atmosphere and maintains an Earth's temperature range. Different latitudes affect climate in the regions. Earth is a sphere, it's tilted on an axis, so solar radiation or sunlight strikes different parts of the Earth at different intensities and actually causes seasons. In those zones that are extreme north and extreme south, we refer to those as the polar areas, and they're cold areas. They get the least amount of sunlight. Intermediate sunlight areas we refer to as temperate. They have hot and cold seasons. Tropical gets the most direct sunlight. As a result, the climate is very warm. Consider the different latitudes. You can see from the picture that the polar zones are located above and below 66.5 degrees north and south. The temperate zones range from 23.5 degrees north to 66.5 degrees north, as well as 23.5 degrees south to 66.5 degrees south. The tropical zone is located between 23.5 degrees north and 23.5 degrees south. Again, the equatorial zone or the tropical zone is the one that gets the most amount of sunlight. The polar zones get the least. If you recall, the largest ecological system is the biosphere. Second is the biome. Next smallest is an ecosystem. Below that, you have communities, populations, and so on. Looking at what shapes an ecosystem, you have four main factors. The first one are biotic and abiotic factors. The second is the niche. Third is community interactions, such as competition, predation, and symbiosis. Fourth is ecological succession, and there are three main types. You have primary succession, secondary succession, and you have something a little unique with succession in your marine ecosystems. Consider the parts of an ecosystem. You have two main types of factors. You have biotic factors and you have abiotic factors. Bio means life, so biotic factors refer to the living organisms in a system. It refers to your food webs, the predator-prey relationships, and so on. So everything biotic is going to refer to your animals, plants, etc. Looking at the abiotic factors, you're looking at A, which means without, and bio, which again means life. So these are your non-living factors in an ecosystem. And more specifically, things that shape what can live in an ecosystem. Abiotic factors refer to those climate factors such as temperature, amount of sunlight for seasons, and precipitation or rainfall that an area has. You're going to find very, very different animals living in a tropical versus polar zone. It also refers to things such as pH. pH of water. Is it acidic? Is it basic? pH of soil. You're also looking at mineral content. Volcanic soils have very different plants growing in them than what you would find in clay soils. Salinity. Is it saltwater? Is it fresh? Very different animals live between different types of water. Consider the things that live in an area. Looking at various combinations of abiotic and biotic factors reflect on what can live in these areas. On the top right, you have an example of a cold alpine lake. You have specific animals that can live in that cold water, and none of them are tropical. Looking at the trees surrounding them, you have alpine pines. You only find these types of trees in specific areas that are mountainous, higher elevations. The result of the mixture of abiotic conditions lets biotic factors thrive or not, depending on the adaptations of these animals. Limiting factors are things that affect the ability of a species to survive. Limiting factors can be water, the amounts of food, predators that prey on organisms, temperature, sunlight, climate, fire, soil chemistry, also the amount of space. Are the animals overcrowded in a system? Lastly, atmospheric gases also are a common limiting factor. Limiting factors, again, are things that affect an organism's or a species' ability to survive within its environment. The place an organism lives is referred to as its habitat. On the top right picture, a dragonfly would very much enjoy living, eating, and mating in the lily pad pond. However, habitats can change very easily, and they can be both natural and human-caused changes. When you see an organism in its natural habitat, chances are it's within a good range of tolerance for that animal. If you don't see an animal in a habitat where it's supposed to be, it may have gone outside of its range of tolerance, whether abiotic or biotic. Biotic, maybe it's been overpreyed. For example, many of our fish are overfished. So where they used to be abundance, they're no longer as populated. Likewise, with abiotic, one of the main concerns about trout in Appalachia is acid rain. Acid rain changes the pH of these streams and lowers it. If the pH is too low, it affects the animal's ability to live there, so it's affected its range of tolerance. Referring to specific biotic factors, you're looking at community interaction, or how animals interact with each other, or plants interact with each other. The three main ways that these populations interact within an ecosystem are competition, predation, and symbiosis. Competition occurs when more than one organism tries to compete for the same resource at the same time. These resources are variable. You can compete for food. Plants and animals both compete for water, space. Plants mostly compete for light and nutrients, and animals compete for mates. You have intraspecific competition, which occurs between members of the same species. For an example, trees compete with each other for light, water, and nutrients. This competition is healthy as it leads to stable populations within a specific area. A niche is a specific place or role that a species has where it lives. Think about the meerkats. The alpha female meerkat, is the one in charge of having babies. The other females support her in that endeavor. The niche of the alpha is very specific. If she dies, someone else takes that niche. This leads us to something called the competitive exclusion principle. This principle states that no two animals can occupy the exact same niche at the exact same time or space for very long, or one of the species is going to die off, or one of the individuals. I know you're familiar with Darwin and Darwin's finches that he toured the Galapagos Islands and found. Each of the finches had different types of beaks and ate different types of food. Looking at these warblers, they're very similar. They're different species of warblers, and they eat similar things, but they feed in different areas of the tree canopy. The upper tree is the Cape May. The bay-breasted feeds in the middle, and the yellow-rumped warbler feeds at the base of the trees and in the middle branches. Each of these animals feeds in a different area, so they don't occupy the same niche, even though they're very similar and feed in the same types of trees. One main type of biotic relationship is predation. In predation, you have a predator-prey relationship where one organism consumes or feeds on another organism. Relationships between organisms are referred to as symbiotic relationships. You've got three main kinds. The three main kinds are a mutualistic relationship, commensalism, and parasitism. A mutualistic relationship is considered a win-win relationship. You have positive effect for one and a positive effect for the other. So both organisms benefit from this relationship. You have two types of mutualistic relationships. The first one is obligate mutualism. They are interdependent organisms that can't survive without each other. For an example, a fungus and an algae working together forms a lichen. These are things that you see on rocks that start to decompose rocks down into soil. They can't survive without each other, so they're obligate. The second type is facultative mutualism. They're not fully dependent on each other. They can survive without each other, but they prefer to be around each other. An example is the clownfish and the sea anemone. They are a facultative mutualistic relationship. A commensal relationship is different from a mutualistic relationship. Remember, mutualistic is win-win. Commensalism, one benefits and the other species is neither harmed nor benefited. An example of this is the epiphyte orchid on a tree branch. Another example of this might be mistletoe growing on a tree. One of the most interesting types of relationships is parasitism. Parasitism, one species benefits, but it benefits while the other species is harmed. You have two types of parasites, ecto and endo. Ectoparasites live on the body, so ticks, fleas, leeches. Endoparasites live inside your body, pinworms, tapeworms. Parasites have evolved in such a way that it benefits them to harm the host, but to not kill the host. If they kill the host, then the parasite has to go out and find another species.